Hey y'all. In this AP exam review, I'm going to focus on the free response question 2, better known as the Prose free response. And hopefully by the end of this video, what you'll be able to do is confidently respond to the prompt with a clear and developed line of reasoning. So let's get into it. The Prose prompt itself has some introductory information, and then it has some stable language. So the introductory information is going to give you the title, the author, the publication date of the passage that you're getting. It also provides a general summary, and that kind of helps you focus your reading. It gives you a general idea of what the plot is, just in case there may be some type of misread when you're going through it, because we know you're in a timed element and we want to be able to help you where we can. It also provides the expectations. So it's going to give that very last sentence is going to give you the direction for your analysis. Now, the stable language is basically specific to each of the different essays, but it's kind of like the guidelines or the good writing expectations. These are just the basics that you'll need when you write your essay. So let's take a look at an example. The excerpt is from Clock Dance by Ann Tyler, published in 2018. In the passage, two girls, Willa and Sonia, head out into a neighborhood to sell candy for their school's orchestra fundraiser. Read the passage carefully. Then, in a well-written essay, analyze how Tyler uses literary elements and techniques to convey the complex relationships among the characters. Now, you'll notice that it is an excerpt, so you're not going to have the entirety. You may have read the full-length text, but you want to concentrate on just what is provided to you. What is the entry point? What is the exit point? And how is this encapsulating something about their relationships? And when we say the complex relationships among the characters, we're not necessarily limited to Willa and Sonia here. There may be other subordinate characters that we can discuss. But that second sentence gives us an idea of what is happening, the plot inside the excerpt that we've been given. Obviously, we know you're in a timed element, but you do want to take the time to annotate as well as to closely read. Because if the focus is to convey a complex relationship, what are you seeing? What makes their relationship complex? So you need to think about how Tyler develops it and why Tyler develops it. So when you have the analysis part, it's not so much just identifying what is happening or explaining to us what is happening. You want to avoid doing that because we are very familiar with the prompt itself. So it's about showcasing your thinking. What do you recognize and why do you feel that that's important in the context of the larger picture? So they do give you a coordinating conjunction and. They've said literary elements and techniques. And you'll notice both of these are plural. So if you get hung up on just one of these devices, it could limit your opportunity to expand your line of reasoning, specifically row B in the analytic rubric. So let's take an example of the goals and the pitfalls, the do's and don'ts for your prompt. What you do want to do is determine the elements and techniques that you will be analyzing. It doesn't matter if you see something, you want to focus on figurative language and someone else focuses on connotative language. It's absolutely fine. You just have to determine those things, because if you're not clearly explaining what you're analyzing, the goal, you may wind up summarizing and telling us the plot more so than analyzing. And again, you want to focus on the details that you believe. What do you notice and why do you think it's important? The biggest do that you want to focus on is to develop your thinking. You may feel that it's obvious. And again, yes, we are very familiar with the prompt. We're very familiar with the passage. However, this is your interpretation. We're not very familiar with you. So the goal is for you to walk us through your thinking. What you don't want to do is stop at complex. The prompt has told you their relationship is complex. Your job is to explain how it's complex and why that complexity is important. If you just say, well, and this proves that their relationship is complex, you're missing an opportunity to actually expand your thinking. Why might we look at the complexity of the human condition, the complexity of the relationships that we have? And don't forget the overall intent. So, if you don't choose to use the literary element of theme, always think about, in the grand scheme of things, what is the authorial intent or the authorial argument? So, what is Tyler doing in this moment? So, as you go through some of the prompts you may practice in class, think about what is the overall theme? What is an overall literary argument that could be made about the human condition? Is it about erasure? If so, what does the writer argue about erasure and how that might affect the way we view our own identity? So it's not so much as identifying one thing and just you're one and done. You want to make sure that you are walking us through your thinking around these specific techniques, these specific elements. So, because of that, I want to talk a little bit about line of reasoning. And inherently, line of reasoning is how a writer organizes their argument. Now, we know a lot of you will decide to pick one or two literary techniques, and you may focus a body paragraph on each of these literary techniques. That's not necessarily a line of reasoning. So let's talk a little bit about what that is and why line of reasoning matters. I want you to think about your essay like a staircase, not a wall. So, in this respect, you have a destination. Your thesis is the entry point to this staircase. Whether you're taking me down your line of reasoning or up your line of reasoning doesn't matter. The whole point is there's a destination. When you are creating a wall, it means that you feel that perhaps the evidence is logical enough that we will understand what you're thinking. And that's very dangerous. It also doesn't give you the opportunity to create connections. In other words, further that argument along the path of the staircase. When you simply stack your evidence one on top of another, or you just use each of the body paragraphs on individual techniques, you're not necessarily showing how these techniques work in concert to get to a specific destination, because writers don't necessarily only use figurative language. It's maybe figurative language with imagery, with dialogue, and each of these parts are integral to the overall character development or to the overall theme. So make sure that you're building a staircase versus a wall. Common lines of reasoning that we normally see are chronological or sequential or linear. I understand that you guys are underneath a 40-minute timeline. Most of the time, people will chronologically walk us through what is happening in order to develop their analysis. But I want to encourage you to think about cause and effect, or maybe comparison. You're not necessarily limited to a 5-paragraph format. You have the opportunity to establish your line of reasoning, and the line of reasoning is not limited to the plot. So, how you walk us through your thinking is more important than you honoring the order of the events in the prose passage. Now, the line of reasoning is important because this clearly shows your thinking and it clearly connects your ideas one to another. So, again, if you're building me that wall instead of the staircase, then you have some ineffective line of reasoning. That could be the difference between a 2 and a 3, or even a 3 and a 4 on row B. It also could be the difference between earning that sophistication point or not. So the goal, an effective line of reasoning, gives you the opportunity to actually explore that nuance a little bit more. In other words, perhaps you're looking at how the narrator chooses to describe these events, not just the descriptions of the characters themselves, but how does the narrator want us to feel about that? And that gives you an opportunity to kind of flesh out the line of reasoning. You can see the bigger picture or the authorial intent that the author is trying to give us. And also an ineffective line of reasoning could be very circular. In other words, if you are saying, hey, I'm going to talk about figurative language, it's important because I feel like it paints a picture in the reader's mind. And then you give me some evidence, and then you say this proves that it's painting a picture in the reader's mind. You've gone in a circle. I don't know how it proves. I don't know how it impacts the text. I know it's there, and I agree with you. That evidence is absolutely there. However, why is it important? And so that leads me to a line of reasoning that could be faulty or limited. Now, we recognize that there may be some misreads that you guys have, but the thing is, you are entering this text for the first time and it's under timed conditions. So, what we look for is, can you flesh out your thinking? Can you develop that line of reasoning and make these connections in the logic that you're using to convince us of this literary argument? If you only give us that wall instead of the staircase, you're limiting yourself on an opportunity to showcase your thinking. Or if you just build me a wall because you're stacking evidence and you only use one line of analysis or one line of commentary, your logic may be faulty. It may be that you're using an absolute statement instead of understanding how specifically each of these pieces of evidence is important to the overall story. So, some of the questions that you can ask yourself when you're trying to develop your line of reasoning are, how do the subordinate ideas or your topic paragraph topic sentences, how do they develop your overall thesis? If you're going to talk about techniques individually, how do they connect back to your overall thesis? Another thing is, how does the paragraph sequencing reveal your line of reasoning? So if you go compare and contrast, or you go cause and effect, or if you're going to list the techniques differently, are you highlighting them in a greatest to least importance in the story? If so, why is that important? Why are you wanting us to understand that you feel that this is the most important element or the most important technique? And to what degree does the quantity and the quality of your evidence provide apt support for your line of reasoning? So if it's just one and done in the detail, have you given us enough in that, or too much inside your quotes, your direct quotes or your paraphrases, to actually help us make connect the dots between your subordinate claims, your thesis, and your commentary? Make sure that what you're selecting actually matches what you're trying to argue. And if you want to review, I've found some of these AP Classroom videos to be really helpful. So these are just kind of quick and dirty ways that you can review what line of reasoning is, how to develop a defensible thesis, or how to explore some nuance or sophistication in your writing. Thanks for your time.